Welcome to Black Tie Optional. I'm Sydney.
I'm Colleen.
Let's get into it.
Welcome back to Black Tie Optional. Today I am interviewing Kassara from KDT Brides. She is a planner for events and weddings in Northwest Arkansas, but she is also a client relations manager at Osage House, which is also located in Northwest Arkansas. It's one of our favorite venues up there, so we are sitting down talking all about her business, and then towards the end we are going to talk all about Osage House, their venue, just things to think about when you are a bride looking for a venue. Anyways, let's get back to the episode. Welcome back to Black Tie Optional. I am so excited to have Kassara on today. Her business, she does many different roles, so I'm going to let her dive into her business name and what all she does, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So my business is KDT Brides and Events. I have been a planner for roughly a little over 6 years. I was an educator for 12, recently retired, thankfully.
Yeah.
And a couple years ago, I had a student's mom ask me to help with some design stuff at their house. And so I did that. And then she asked me to start planning her husband's birthday and then her kid's birthday. And so I kind of got into planning that way. Well, then I planned my own wedding, and then my friends started getting married, and I would help them plan their weddings. And it just kind of spiraled from there. A lot of my clients in the beginning were kind of, friends or friends of family or, close referrals. And then in the last 2 years, I have, dived more into it.
Mm-hmm.
I started here at Osage 6 months ago, and that really helped me grow my business, just becoming more connected with vendors and understanding the perspective of a venue and meeting clients on tours and that sort of thing. So I love teaching, and I'm doing this full time and also working here at Osage. And in addition to planning, I recently started offering some rentals. One which was showcased at our open house back in April. It's a large marquee sign. And that was just a wild, ridiculous idea that I had after leaving the lake one day and passing this very crappy vintage sign. My dad and my brother took it home. They refurbished it for me. It's awesome. It's a specific rental. Like, it's got to be for the right thing, mostly for events in my opinion, but I'm just waiting to get some pictures of it for a wedding, because I think it would make an awesome bar sign or welcome sign outside. It's huge and it's awesome. And then I'm going to be offering a phone booth rental probably starting in the month of August, and I've got some exciting plans for that. We just don't have any local phone booths, and I had a bride that wanted one, so my dad built it. And
So you mean not like the phones, like an actual booth?
So it's the phone booth, and then I have a partnership with After the Tone, and my brides can rent a phone from them at a discounted rate.
Fun.
And then that's where people can go and leave, a message with the couple. But I've got some other ideas to make it a little bit more creative. Some people don't want to do the phone booth. They want, a photo booth. And so I'm just kind of looking at different options. But it's really cool. It's easy to break down and not easy to transport because it won't fit in my Jeep. But I'll figure that piece out later. And I just wanted one to have here in Northwest Arkansas.
I feel like once you get started in the wedding world, you're like, okay, wow, there's like so many different things, like avenues you could do.
It's a problem for me. My husband's like, can you just stop? Like, slow down.
Can we just stick to one couple things?
Stop filling my garage with things. That's his problem.
So would you say that wedding planning out of like birthday, like everything, like would maybe be your favorite?
Yeah. I've planned a few events, and then, when I was a teacher, and then now at Osage House, we plan several events, and I like it, but weddings are just a whole different level. It's funny because I've recently talked to a day of coordinator who offers that only, and I said, why? And she was like, I don't really want to do the planning process. I like the day of. And I'm like, I love the planning process. I want someone else to come in and do the day, like the setup of things. Like, I like the execution and the logistics of things, and the connections that you make with the different vendors, you know, throughout the whole process.
Yeah.
I like giving my brides, you know, all the visuals and giving them the full picture because they don't see it like planners do. Like, it's
Right.
really hard for them to visualize.
It's kind of like people going and buying houses like that aren't totally done yet. They cannot picture what it could be.
Right. I'm not that person.
Yeah.
When I walk in somewhere, I almost immediately see it. And then I always love when someone's like, well, what if we do this? And I'm like, yeah, okay, I didn't see that, but now I see it. And I'm very, very visual, very creative. It's a fault of mine too.
Yeah. I get that. So like being a planner, like I know you were saying, you know, the day of execution can be just a lot, you know, a lot. Do you see anything that couples do having, let's say having a planner or not having a planner, that's a lot of like hiccups that they don't realize until their wedding day gets here?
If they hire me, if they hire a planner, no, I don't think so. I think it's more or less, and this is the downfall of being a day of coordinator. I have hard boundaries, so I have a hard time having hard boundaries because I like to be super helpful. So I, you know, try to prepare my brides. I don't just show up on the day of and just, you know, do what, you know, needs to be done. Like, I try to prepare them in advance. I would actually say it's typically the family or the bridal party's fault. It's like, well, my aunt wants to step in and do something, or, you know, one of the bridesmaids is like, oh, it's time to do this. And you're like, no, that's my job. Like, let me help you. I'll share a funny story on that.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, I had done a few weddings, but I was an educator, so I only did a few a year. And then now as a mom, it's the same. Like, I can only do, I have to prioritize my time. And so a couple years ago, I had done a friend's wedding, and she had sparklers, and we were at the Apollo, and it's a movie theater, small movie theater, so you can imagine there's not a whole lot of circulation going through there. Well, the bridesmaids decide to start lighting all the sparklers, and the doors are wide open. So the fire alarm goes off. The fire truck shows up.
Did the sprinklers go off?
Oh, no.
Oh.
No, thank God. But there was so much smoke, and it was so embarrassing. But I have a picture of the bride just like standing in front of the fire truck because we just had to laugh it off. But I want to fully blame the bridesmaids because I would have known better. I wouldn't have lit them, but they were just like so anxious. Like, we got to do this. And it's like, just wait. I promise. I've since learned that just to make sure and have enough assistance and enough hands on deck, and just to over communicate with people that, like, please, like, if you think something needs done, come to me first.
Yes.
And, you know, ultimately they're just trying to be helpful, but sometimes it's not the most helpful.
Yeah. What would you tell couples that are maybe like in the like just got engaged and they're trying to prioritize their budget, and they're kind of like, do we really need a planner? You know, I'm pretty an organized person, or, you know, all the things like that. How would you not sell them on it, but how would you like try to get them to see the value? Because I think every other vendor knows that value of a planner, but a lot of times couples are like, oh, I can do it.
Yeah. Well, I was that bride. I mean, we paid for our own wedding, but man, I think in my process might be different from other planners.
Right.
I mean, I have planner friends, but, you know, I kind of figured a lot of this out on my own, and then, you know, learned by watching or having conversations with other planners. I mean, I still text, you know, a close florist friend and another day of coordinator all the time and ask them questions. But for me, it's full transparency. I'm very honest about my process. I'm honest about, you know, the experiences I've had in the past. I, you know, try to be realistic about, you know, what they're wanting and what is, you know, sustainable for their budget. And I think, you know, when I have conversations with couples that have either hired me or not hired me, they've always kind of said, like, I really appreciated all the help that you gave me, and that you know, broke down my budget without even me hiring you. And that's just because, coming as a bride that planned her own wedding, I didn't have any guidance and I didn't really have that support. And you get on the knot and it's like, oh yeah, all this stuff. And you get on Pinterest, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get this huge chandelier for my dance floor. And then you realize the cost of it and they don't know that.
Right.
And so even if I can just help, give advice or information or better maybe recommendations of where they can find that information, then I'm willing to do it. Other planners might get, be upset that I do that. But I also am always very open to, if I don't fit in their budget, I have great recommendations for people that would, because ultimately I want their day to be great. And I may not be their person and they may not be my people either, which is fine.
So do you only, when it comes to weddings, do you offer like 100% full planning, or do you sometimes just do like day of coordination or month of, I know there's like different categories.
Yeah. So it's almost funny. Every inquiry I get is almost like, just being in the new beginning stages of really growing my business, and transparently, I'm the worst at social media. I think some people are like, okay, yeah, I feel like I could just hire her for day of coordination. And then we sit down and talk and they're like, okay, actually, I think I want you for a full service. Right. So a lot of my brides do hire me for a full service. Maybe that's because I try to accommodate their budget and their needs. So kind of my process is I had a 3-hour conversation with my consultation the other night, and I broke down her budget and I gave her, realistic ideas of what she could do with it. And I said transparently, you can't hire me full service, but she made it a priority to, because she knows that I'm going to save her money in other ways and that we can get creative on things. And ultimately she doesn't have the time to plan a full wedding. She has a, awesome career. And so I think she was right. She was just realizing the value of it. I think a big piece of hiring vendors, specifically a planner, is making sure you have a good, solid relationship with them and that you have good communication with them. And ultimately it'll work out and you'll find ways of, making that money back if you do spend for full service. But I do offer full service, partial planning, month of, day of. I'm not really day of, it's more month of. And I have some brides that are like, well, I want to do this, this, and this. And so we kind of divvy out who is going to do what, and then I base the pricing off of that.
I could see how like people who offer just like day of, how it could go so wrong if like the bride or mom or whoever was like planning, it didn't, like they didn't do what they were supposed to do, and then it almost looks like it would be the quote unquote planner of the day's fault.
That's happened to me. Yeah. That's happened to me where I show up and I'm like, well, I didn't hire this person and that, like, I didn't know that. So that's a big part of like having multiple consultations throughout the process. But like hiring a month of coordinator or a day of coordinator a month or two before your wedding isn't great advice. Like I would not recommend that to anybody. And if someone came to me and said that, I would almost be like, yikes. Okay. I don't know, like, what have you done? And it would be a very long process. And then it's almost like it's more than just month of, it's 2 month of.
Exactly. Right. Because then you're putting your name on the line, because then everyone's going to be upset with you at the wedding.
That is the scariest part about being a wedding planner for me. Like, I have a lot of brides that are like, you're just not anxious, you don't stress. And I'm like, I don't. It takes a lot for me to stress out. It's people thinking it was your fault when really you're like, well, I was just hired and
out of my control.
I didn't know all of this. And so that's, once again, just lots of transparency, lots of communication, early connection. I haven't had many brides that hire me before they get a venue, but I almost always recommend it because they don't necessarily know what they're signing up for.
So do you help read contracts and things like that? Okay.
Yeah. I just had an issue with a contract that like the bride wasn't aware of, and so we'll work on that together. I mean, even here at Osage, we have things that brides don't know, and then they realize later that like maybe it doesn't align with their vision. Right. Maybe it's and we try to be very transparent about things, but maybe they want stuff hanging on the walls. Well, we don't allow that.
Right.
And we go over rules and policies and all of that just before their wedding date. But
Well, at the end of the day, like, I mean, come on. 9 out of 10 people probably don't read like the whole thing when you're just like checking off like, okay, I'm signing that, you know, like, I mean, I know I don't.
No. And when you're in the beginning stages of planning, you're thinking, how am I going to afford this? Who am I going to hire? When do I hire? Am I behind? Like, who's coming? What do I do with this? Like, it's funny because I tell brides, I'm like, no matter if you hire a planner or not, you're going to be overwhelmed. This is like the biggest day of your life, and you don't know what you're doing. And all these people are coming at you. And it's kind of like being a mom. Like, everybody asks, like, are you ready? No, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not ready. I'm about to have a baby.
Yeah.
And you don't know until you know.
Yeah.
And so it's more or less like I'm on call 24/7 to ease a bride's anxieties and stresses. And I'm totally fine with that. Like,
Yeah.
I love getting texts from my brides. And if I'm busy and I have something going on, I just say, hey, I'm going to text you back later.
Right.
They know they're always a priority for me, but I also have a family and another job and other weddings that I have to do. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What is a way that you see, like when you're giving couples advice that are trying to save money, what is a good avenue that you can tell them, like, this is a really good way I've seen people save money, or things like that?
It's funny because people get more and more creative about that. But for me, it's invitations, probably first and foremost, mostly because there are very affordable ways to do invitations. I literally just stuffed 120 of them and, did the liner myself. And wow, that was a lot of work. I have a whole new appreciation for, Dayflower Designs and companies like that I get why they charge what they charge. And then there's so many technicalities with stamps and all the things that are on it. But I would say invitations and double dipping in your florals, using them for the ceremony and the reception. I hate to do it to my rental companies, but purchasing things too over renting them, because one, they can sell them to, on Marketplace or whatever, or they can, use, if they're getting a couch, they can use it in their office at home. Or I'm a big advocate of purchasing linens over renting them, because they are
kind of the same
significantly
price.
Cheaper.
Yeah. Or like if you're getting bulk. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, I hate to do it. And it's honestly not my favorite because they come wrinkled or whatever. But it does save a big chunk of money for brides.
Yeah. Which, and I mean, some brides are like, oh, I don't want to deal with that stress. I don't want to have to worry about selling it. It's going to sit in my garage. I'm not actually going to save money. So it's like, okay, then rent it. But if maybe there is that like more DIY bride, or, doesn't mind to sell things, then it's like, that would make more sense for you.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you could splurge somewhere else. With all of like the wedding trends, like we were talking about Pinterest and all the things like that, I feel like TikTok is, we're seeing all these very, very lavish weddings that, like you said, oh, hanging from the ceiling. I had no idea it was going to cost this much money.
Yeah.
What, like, do you have a hard time helping couples like come back down to their budget? Like, do couples get super disappointed when they realize like, oh, I absolutely cannot afford that?
Yes and no. I mean, obviously, like, the reality when you tell a bride like what flowers cost, they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Or, I had a bride the other day. She was like, I want these really pretty linens that have, all the designs on it. And I was like, do you know what it costs to rent one of those? Like, I'm game. Let's do it. But
I'll do whatever you want. But
what are you going to give up on? Because those are a lot. And so, yes and no. I try to give my brides the full picture. So when I, initially sit down with them, it's, what are your priorities? Do you care about a dance floor? Do you care about soft seating? Do you care about a plated, plates and flatware at every table? And if they say, yes, no, whatever, maybe, if there's room in the budget, I try to give them, maybe a version of that. Maybe it's they can't get plates and flatware at every table, but they could put a napkin and they could do a menu, and we can, get those printed cheap and cute. If they want a ceiling installation, there are so many other options besides flowers. And it's all about getting creative. The trends are hard because I love them and it's easy to get caught up in them, and they give great inspiration, but it's almost like one person jumps on it and then 5 people do, and then your wedding's the same as everybody else's that year. So I try, it's literally my biggest intention, and what I want my brand to be about is, let's do something different. Let's make this about you guys and what feels right and authentic for you. And if you don't want, hydrangeas hanging from the ceiling, that's fine. We'll come up with something else if, you want something up there. Or let's find another way to make a big impact in the room that doesn't necessarily have to hang from the ceiling.
I was talking to one bride that she's a photographer, but she's also a bride. And that's how she was saying she was trying to save money, is like their head table, which like it's kind of like family style, is going to be like this huge floral installment. But then all of the other tables are just basic. And she's like, I don't really think our guests are going to care that the table's basic. They're going to be on the dance floor. And she was like, I don't need the photographer to take 16 tables pictures. I'm not going to print them.
No.
So she's like, I would rather one big statement piece, put my money there versus like spread it, sprinkle it on the others. And I was like, yeah, I like that.
And that is like, brides care too much about what, Aunt Sue thinks about, or, my biggest priority for our wedding was that everybody had a great time. We wanted it to be a party, and I wanted to feel beautiful. That was it. And so I think if you just think about like what your ultimate experience is for your guests and what you want, like, just don't worry about the rest. Nobody's going to remember that you had flowers on the table or what color your linens were. Like, they're not. They might think of the overall picture, but they're going to think, and the sous chef told us this the other day, they're going to remember how they felt in their room. They're going to remember kind of the food they ate, the vibe that they were surrounded by, like, was there finger foods? They kind of got to stand there and talk to their friends and drink and eat. They're going to remember, those sensory things. Yeah. And so as much as you want nice, expensive things, and there's room for those brides, and I'll take those brides.
Yeah.
It's just, there's other ways to make it a great experience without spending, every dollar on something.
And I think honestly, like, I think everyone can agree right now in the economy, like, everyone is trying to save somewhere, like, no matter what your job is, like, you're just, so it's good, even if you have like an unlimited budget, to just prioritize, what, like you said, what's important to you. Okay. So since you're like all day with brides, you see every vendor, you're talking to them ahead of time, the whole shebang. What is one vendor, besides a planner, obviously, that you always tell the couple, like, make sure you're investing? Like, don't hire the cheapest person who gave you a quote. Who do you see, I guess, like, being like, that one's super important?
Well, I guess it kind of goes with their priorities. I've had some brides that are like, I don't have a big family and I don't need a bunch of pictures of me by myself, or a picture with my mom, then a picture with my dad, and then a picture with my sister, and then a picture with my brother. It's like, I want my whole family. So I have some brides that, like, pictures aren't a huge thing. We want, some good ones of us, and we want some of, our reception a little bit, and then that's okay. And then some people, it's like, well, I don't want it to be boring. I want it to be fun and vibey. So it's like, well, then that's the DJ. Like, let's prioritize a DJ. Some people, it is the aesthetic. It is like what it all looks like. So it really depends on the bride. If it were me again as a bride, I think I would maybe, I would have prioritized a planner, and just the ease of the day. But then I probably would have prioritized spending more on a photographer and someone that is going to capture me and my husband and the moments that are important, not necessarily the ones that are out in front of, the ceremony space or the detail pictures. It's more or less like, who's going to catch those moments,
like the in-between moments.
I most likely forgot. And it's funny because I've had conversations with photographers before, and I'm like, I don't get the blurry pictures. I think there's a space for it for some, but you see like detail pictures that are blurry, and you're like, well, those are details. Like, you're supposed to be able to see those.
Okay, so as a wedding planner, when you're helping couples with timeline and things like that, are you pro first look? Are you not?
Definitely. The reason why I chose it to do it for myself was because I was going to be really far away from my husband, and I have terrible eyesight and refuse to wear any sort of contacts or anything. And I also just really wanted to be close to him the first time he saw me. I wanted it to be very intimate and just a moment that we could privately share. My husband is quite the crybaby, so I knew he was going to cry regardless if I was in front of him or 50 feet from him. And he cried both times, thankfully. But I think like that day is so full of everybody and everything. I got in the bath before I like got fully ready, and my maid of honor wrote my vows like for me because I was so overwhelmed and I was just so anxious, and it was just like too much. And I think with a first look, it just gives you a moment to breathe before it all starts. It gives you a moment to connect. And maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be a first look, but private vows, or I had a couple that right after their first look, we like hid them away and they got to get a drink up at the bar at Onyx headquarters. And they got to go upstairs and they had a private little table and they just had a drink. And they said that was their most favorite time of the day because it just gave them a second to just take it in and realize that like everything was about to happen. And so I think people think that like it's so untraditional or it's going to take away from that moment. But to me, I think it's an added moment. It's an added time for you to just slow down, breathe, and connect with each other.
I love that. Yeah, we actually had a couple at Osage that they also did a first look, but even before the first look, like they wanted to be able to like hang out and like not have those nerves. So I think I don't know if it's like 9 a.m. when everyone could get in here, but it was sometime like that. Everyone started like piling in, and I think makeup artists maybe started on bridesmaids and things like that.
Yeah.
But her and then her husband like went and had a cup of coffee and like walked around. I know, because it was like a really pretty day. So they walked around, but like she wasn't in hair or makeup.
Please tell me you have videos of this. We need it.
I don't have videos of them like the getting ready because we weren't here yet, unfortunately. But that was just like a moment of just them two, no pressure. And then they went to their getting ready spaces like, you know, there were no nerves. They had already seen each other that day. It was like a good moment, but yet they weren't ready. So it wasn't like ruining anything for them.
It's a great time to like either do private vows or share your like wedding gift that day or, you know, just reflect on your relationship. Like it's so needed. And I get being traditional, and you just get to knock out pictures and family, and it's not this huge ordeal. It's awesome. Yeah. And a first look with a dad or a mom. That's like one of my most favorite parts of my day is the first look with my dad.
I also love first look with like sweet old little grandparents.
Yes.
I think those are so cute. Yes. They're really cute. Okay, so before we wrap up, do you have any piece of advice for couples at any point in the wedding planning phase?
Yeah. My biggest advice, I think, is just to slow down and try to enjoy it. Like, it's so stressful. It's financially stressful. When parents are asking questions and, mom's upset that you didn't do this or dad needs this, or mother-in-law, this is the beginning of mother-in-laws. Right. And I have a fantastic one, so I can't say anything, but, take it in, enjoy it. Hopefully you don't get married more than once, and you don't get this time back. I mean, I've been married for 8 years now, 2 kids, and I would do anything to just have another wedding again, just to enjoy it and take it in more.
So you're saying at 10 years, you're going to have a vow renewal?
So we just went to one in St. Lucia. Yeah. It was incredible. I think I'm going to go to another country. Yeah. But yeah, I would be down for it. I think it's great. And just reconnect and reestablish some ground rules again. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I like that too. All right. Well, tell everyone where they can find you.
So you can find me on Instagram at KDT Brides, or you can look on my website. I'm open to texts, calls, emails, all of the above. That's me.
Hey guys, just wanted to take a brief pause in the episode to tell you thank you for supporting our podcast. It would mean the world to us if you could subscribe to whatever platform you are listening on. Let's get back to the episode. Different podcast. We're actually going to be interviewing, I say a venue, like obviously I'm talking to someone and not a building, but I'm really excited. Osage House feels like a second home to us. We come here a lot, and I'm never upset about when our inquiries come in for Osage House. But I am sitting down with Cassara today, and I'm going to let her explain her role in this beautiful venues business, and kind of we'll go from there.
Yeah. Okay, so I am the client relations manager. We have another client relations manager. Well, let me go back. I'm client relations manager and social media manager. Okay. So I'm the girl behind the DMs and the post. Can't always say I'm doing the best job. But
so if you're talking to them in the DMs, it's you.
Yes. And then we have AJ. She is our other client relations manager. And there's two of us because we alternate weekends. And it would be a lot for one person to do. And then Morgan is in charge of our contracts and proposals and tours. She's kind of, the logistical. You kind of ask her all the questions. We have Stephanie. She's our facilities manager and so much more. She, makes sure that the buildings are maintained and make sure that we have all the stock that we need. She hires our site attendants. She does a lot. And then we have Ashley, the owner, and she just kind of advises us. She is, our soundboard, the reason why we do things and why we don't do things. And she's just our biggest support system, obviously. She's very involved for a mom of two and someone that is constantly busy. And her husband is the architect of Osage House.
I was going to say, if you've ever been to a wedding here or anything like that, there's not one space. I feel like that's not beautiful. And there's two different buildings on the property.
So we have the Reserve, which is our smaller venue that offers an outdoor ceremony space. And we have the Hall, which is has the main hall, the bottom patio, and then you can add on the chapel as well.
Okay. I was going to say, I feel like we've had a Reserve wedding where they also had the chapel down there, and then they came back to here.
Yeah, so we just had one 2 weeks ago. The chapel is reserved, is associated with the hall. So the only way you can reserve the chapel is if no event is taking place at the hall.
Right.
It's kind of complicated, but we had a July wedding that they were like, we don't want to do a flip. Is it open? It was open.
Yeah.
And transparently, from a venue standpoint, we love our venues. I think we should have put in more storage. we do not have enough space for storage, tables,
Which is funny
chairs,
because
boxes,
I feel
whatever.
when you look around here, it's wow, these buildings are huge. And it just shows you can never have enough storage.
The spaces are huge, but we just didn't do enough closets.
Yeah. I get that. I feel like everyone feels like that even at their own house.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Awesome. So to walk me through it, a couple is just newly engaged, they're venue shopping. What is there a process to booking a venue? What does that look like?
Yeah. So everybody approaches it different. I've had DMs, I've gotten phone calls. I'm sure she gets text messages. And then we have, our inquiry form on our website. And so essentially once you inquire, we create you're considered a lead in our system. And that is when we send over our information. It breaks down, what our inventory is, square footage, what each venue offers. It breaks down the pricing based off of month, season,
right.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then it kind of just says, if you would like to book a tour, reach out, respond to this email. And then that's when we kind of connect with them personally as far as what is your availability when we're available. Do you want to see one venue or both venues? And then
do most couples book tours before booking a?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Very few are sight unseen unless they've, maybe been here a few times, or it was highly encouraged by their, planner or photographer or whatever. But yeah, and it gives us a chance too to stand around and answer questions for them. So we really encourage it. If they have a really specific date that they're worried is going to get booked, then we try to accommodate that. But yeah.
I was gonna say, one thing I do love about Osage is y'all's the vendor room. Not all venues have a vendor room. Sometimes we don't even have a closet.
You don't like eating in the kitchen?
No. But it is so nice because there's couch it. Like it's not just like, oh, here's your
There's
broom
a space
closet.
you can put your bags, and and it's locked. And it's funny because I never put anything down there. I hide stuff in the closets.
Oh, really?
But it is a really nice space.
I know we unload, like for video, we have like all of our gear, so it's nice to just like wheel it downstairs and just
I wouldn't say that the DJs or the bands actually like that room because they don't want to take their stuff down there, but I bet they enjoy eating their meals down there.
Yes, it is nice. So as far as couples looking at venues, is there any like advice you would give them, even if they're not booking at Osage, that maybe something they need to look at in the contract, or like things they need to take into consideration when looking at venues?
Yeah, I mean, full transparency, venues are expensive. I mean, and it takes a lot to run them. So if you're spending as much money as you are on a venue, read your contract and know what it says, and know that like this is a business, and the 5 of us that work here, our livelihoods depend on this. I bring home an income, and so we have to honor what our contract says, and we see the client, and we want to be understanding of people's situations. If things arise or things happen, it is a business, and we have to honor our contract, and we try to be very transparent about what it says and what our process is. But ask questions. If you don't know, ask questions, and we'll do the best that we can to answer them for you. When reviewing contracts, it's, just make sure that like you're looking at weather changes, and some people, when they book a venue, they like automatically assume they can have their rehearsal there. Okay. And if we have an event on a Friday night, we can't give them a rehearsal time. Right. It's not that we won't try to accommodate that rehearsal time, but it may not be the night before your wedding.
Right.
And then I would probably say, look at, how much is due and when it's due. I've had a lot of brides say, well, can I pay more? Can I pay more? Yeah, you can always pay more. Or can I break it out differently? So I would pay attention to that, and just make sure you're asking the right questions as far as like, is there a credit card fee or whatever? Is there ways of avoiding a credit card fee? Yeah, pay with cash, check.
Yeah.
And then most venues will give you access to a portal once you've signed a contract, and utilize that. Okay. It's got floor plans on it, and it's got forms on it that you can fill out, and you can add your wedding planner to it, or, we put our preferred vendor list on there. And so utilize the resources that venues give you, because it might save you, trying to call or connect with somebody. You might be able to find it out on your own.
I feel like one thing I have like run into with not Osage, I don't know if you guys have like a hard in or out time, but like there's some venues that if you have a hard out time, like you're charged essentially per minute.
We do have a policy on that. I think, so our hours we offer, if you, purchase the venue for the full day, you get access to the venue at 9, and then all guests and anybody not associated with the bridal party or cleanup crew, they need to leave by 11, and then you have until 1 to get out. We've had extremely elaborate weddings where it was, just a few weeks ago, they had put drapery over all the windows. We understand it's not realistic that you're going to be out by 1 a.m. That's where those, connections with the vendors are really important. And adventurers, they were quick. They came in, they took it down. But like the night before, we allowed them to do setup after they cleaned up the night before wedding. Yeah. And that's just because we have a great relationship with them. They know our policies, they know our procedures, they know our people. And so it was like, yeah, we'll accommodate that. They're not trying to take advantage of us. It was just, that's what's best for everybody, because nobody wants to be here past 1 a.m.
Right.
Or if they do, they probably need to go to bed.
Yeah. Exactly. And I guess like you're saying, like the open communication, don't just like, don't have, oh, well, I just expect that. But then also don't not communicate that. And then you're like, oh, what the heck?
Well, and if you're dilly-dallying while you're cleaning up, yeah, we might be charging you. But if you're like hustling and everybody's all hands on deck, and it's like, well, we're trying. I mean, I've seen those poor planners. I've been one of those poor planners that it's like, I'm getting there. We're going to be understanding of that. And as a client relations manager, our clients have our phone numbers. They can text us, they can call us, they can let us know, something happened. Our site attendants are in constant communication with us. And so I'm always like, just give me a heads up. Let me know. That way my site attendant isn't freaking out that something's going wrong.
Yeah.
And I think just making sure you have good relationships with your venues and knowing who to call and when to call. Having great security, that's another essential part.
I was going to say, I feel like, because I know, what is it, y'all's policy that if you have alcohol, there has to be security? Or
Our policy is to have security regardless. Okay. The number of security guards is dependent on your guest count.
Okay.
And we have made accommodations that if there is no alcohol, maybe you only need one, depending on your guest count, depending on the time of the day. But we require security guards. One, it keeps us safe. It keeps the guests safe. You never know. Like I've had a security guard that ran down the road once because someone was about to drive into something.
That's their only focus of the day. So that's nice. Like,
they're trying to keep people safe and make sure that nothing happens. And so they're essential. Yeah. And we hire them. We don't allow our guests to hire them, and it should be included in your base fee. But then if you have a higher guest count, then we have to charge extra for them. Not because we want to, but we have to, they charge us for it.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. So I know we didn't really get into it yet, and I know Ashley is not here with us, but do you have like any insights to maybe kind of the story of Osage, or how it like what were they just like, I want to own a wedding venue, or was their dreams or anything like that?
I know very little about this. And when I asked her, she said it was a very long story. But I will say that once the property was purchased, I know that the hall was the original plan, and then things were, I think, a little delayed. And so the reserve came about. And I asked about our first event because our fifth birthday is coming up in like 2 days. And I said, what was our first event? Was it a wedding? And she said it was actually a mom's event for a fundraiser for domestic violence. And she said, while the event was being set up, they had no parking lot and they were laying sod down. So literally that day we had fresh grass. I know, with buildings, especially post-COVID, like things don't always go according to plan. And I know it was probably really stressful at the time for them, but we did everything we could to accommodate the brides. And, you're signing up for a venue that's not totally done. And I think brides know that. But, and I don't know that was our experience, but I'm sure it was difficult, but we're glad to be here now.
There's obviously always venues, especially in Northwest Arkansas, popping up. And I've talked to couples that have booked venues that haven't gone on a tour yet because it's not done. And I'm like, well, brave of you. You just never know.
I'm like, okay, can you map this out on the floor and show me what this looks like? Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess they're just, go with the flow, because it would take a certain type of person to be like, oh yeah, that's totally fine.
That is definitely where you hire a planner.
Yeah.
Review your contract and know what it's going to look like.
Yeah. So, okay, you did mention the preferred vendors list. I know I see on social media, do you guys change that every year? Like how, do you have a wide variety of all the different vendors?
Yes. We try to find a space for everybody, not everybody that applies, but we try to find, we make sure that there's videographers, specialty vendors, cake, florist, whatever. Our preferred vendor list is shared with our contracted clients. And we start the application process right after the new year. This past year, we had everybody decided by March. I think our goal is to do it a little bit earlier this next year, knowing when we're trying to schedule our open house. But it is an application-based thing. You have to apply, and we kind of have eligibility criteria as far as what your social media presence looks like, how long you've been in business, what your clientele is. Not necessarily that, but I'm trying to think of all the questions that we asked on it. We ask people to explain why they started their business, what's important about their business, what's important about like them specifically versus others. And it's funny because it's a Google form, and I think some people pass it off that it's not, I'm just answering some questions, but we take the time to read through them.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that if we're recommending a vendor to someone with a small budget or a big budget, that we stand by that business and that they're getting their money's worth, whether it's,
they're not going to come to you and be like, you recommended ABC and they did terrible. Yeah, absolutely.
And not to say that we haven't had experiences. Everybody has things. Vendors we're not perfect people. But if we have them on our vendor list, like they're held to a standard, they understand our policies, their procedures, they have to sign an agreement. And, a lot of vendors we require insurance of. We just want to make sure that, it's good business for them, good business for us, and great for our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything wrapping up that you would love to share about Osage, or maybe any tips for any couples, or maybe even share like one of your favorite parts of the venue?
Oh, that's easy. My favorite room in the venue is the groom suite. Like sometimes
it's so cool.
It's so cool. It's so pretty. It's so spacious. I'm like, excuse me, how about the grooms go upstairs? Brides are downstairs. I love the groom suite. I love the chapel. I love the property in general, except for when it's really hot or really cold. I was working the wedding for the snow this past year. We, just like every other business, we are learning, growing, changing, adapting. We are receptive to feedback. Meant to Mix requested like more space in the kitchen. We got them a shelf. So we love getting feedback from our clients and our vendors and how we can be more accommodating and make, the space better for everybody. I would say specifically for me, social media and a client relations manager is one, share your photos. We don't get enough pictures. And I would share them more, but I get limited galleries and that sort of thing. And two, come prepared to your final walkthrough with your floor plan and your vendors and your insurance, because we're essentially going to be 2 to 4 weeks out from your wedding, and I'm going to have to haggle you if I don't get that stuff. And so just come a little bit prepared. And even if it's not, final guest count and this is our final floor plan, just give me, show me something so that I can be like, okay, I know what this is and I know what this is. Having a planner always makes the process easier. Actually, I shouldn't say always, there are those times where it doesn't happen, but
you might have that type A bride that it's like, okay, you did amazing. How did you pull this off?
Having a planner, having a point of contact, having somebody that I know I can go to at the end of the night and say, okay, what happened? What do we need to do? It's always helpful, and it makes everybody's life easier.
And then also, we did not mention the rental space right down the road, Osage House.
Yes, Osage House.
Yes.
So some people don't know about it. And the thing about it is we do not reserve it for our weddings and our couples because it's on Airbnb and all these other, I can't even tell you. But I highly recommend it for your out-of-town guests, moms, dads, bridesmaids for the night before. We've had a lot of bridal parties get ready there. It makes really cute pictures, and it's great because it's close. And if you can't get over here until 9, maybe a little bit before, you might have to start on hair and makeup. And so it's really close by. I've had a bride, she rented a golf cart for me and they drove it home.
You can take the back roads. You don't have to go like the main road. I like that.
Yeah. So it's awesome and it's super cute.
Yeah. And like it's spacious. It has 2 king beds and then is it queen bunks?
Yeah. Queen bunks. And then it's got that little loft space upstairs if you've got like a kid up there or whatever. It's super spacious, super cute and very close to everything. I mean, we've rented it for concerts and girls' nights. We're going to do a styled shoot there in a couple months. Okay, and so it's a great space.
Yeah, it is. I think that we've kind of accomplished a good chunk about, Osage, and maybe we'll have to have Ashley on so she can give us the long
100%.
Long version of her vision.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But obviously they can find you guys where at Osage House?
Yeah, Instagram. We have 3. Sorry, we always share the same story on some, but 3 Instagrams with Oz House, The Reserve, and Osage House. And then you can always email info@osagehouse.com to inquire, and then also through our website.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye. As we finish this episode, we want to say a big thank you to all of the support on our podcast. You can find us at Black Tie Opt Podcast. We are on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thank you so much for supporting our podcast.